Alright, hi everyone, this is an updated video on a recent one I made with a tier list of pretty much all the major races that we can find on EO. Now, I'm not gonna talk too much about this one. What you see on the screen was already talked about in the last video, so if you're curious about some of the ratings and why certain races or even individuals or groups are where they are, please refer to that video. I'll link it below in the description. But just to get a few things out of the way, from the last video I've changed the name of the first tier, which used to be Supreme, to Apex. Means the same thing in this context, just the strongest beings you can find on EO. I just thought the name would be a bit more fitting. And also, for those who are watching this one before the other one, all of these rankings are based on an average and on one individual, usually from a particular race or a group. So, as an example, if we have the undead here, the undead as a group are very strong, but their strength is usually in their large numbers. And while there are some strong undeads, I'm ranking them here if we just took an average undead and pitted it against, well, any other average being on this list, right? Some of the gaps between the races are also bigger than this list might imply, which might mean that I should have maybe made more tiers, but we'll leave it as is for now. I didn't want to change it too much from the last one, because I just want to add more races to it, but yeah, refer to the previous video if you are curious as to why some things are where they are. With that being said, we have some new races that I took from the comments, both here on YouTube and some other comments on social media that I've seen people bring up. As well as some points that have been brought up, so I wanted to add those to the list so it's a bit more comprehensive and that we hopefully cover as much as we can. Now, individuals, even though there are some very powerful ones, well, they will be mentioned here in one or two instances, like with Malachi here, and we have Rune, but I do intend to make a full, complete separate list for individuals at some point, so for this one we'll mainly focus on the races. And with the races, let's start with the giant apes. Now, giant apes, not a very prevalent race on EO. They mainly live on Xu, and we only see them in Shadow of the Phoenix, unless I'm misremembering something. But where we do see them, they are fairly strong. I would put them on the same level as, well, I would put them in average tier. I'm thinking. Well, actually, maybe no. For me, I would put them at the bottom of the strong tier, because I don't think individually they're as strong as Wolflings or Dark Elves, Ice Elves and stuff like that, but they have shown the ability to use magic, and they can be really annoying, and some of them are even fairly intelligent to the point where they even know human speech, or the main speech that most races or characters use in SpellForce. So for that reason, I would put them at the bottom of strong. Some of their strength has to do with where we meet them in the game, because a lot of the units in Shadow of the Phoenix are very strong, but I do think it's warranted mainly because of their magic usage. And they seem to be somewhat proficient at it, compared to something like Minotaurs or Griffins, who aren't known to be very good or avid magic users. I would put them above. Now, something like elves, they do use more magic than the giant apes, but still I feel like just in a straight up fight, a giant ape would come on top when compared to those. Depends on which one, but because there are some weak ones, but if we take the average. Now, next up are blades, and blades originally I thought about putting them with the undead, but I saw some comments that were of the opinion that maybe blades should have their own tier, because yes, while they are undead, I would argue that as units and as I wouldn't consider them a separate race, but they are different enough to warrant a separate tier, and they are a lot stronger than normal undead. So for that reason, I would bump them up into strong, and I would bump them up into strong above demons and below Shaikan. Why here? Because we have some evidence of the blades decimating the demons in SpellForce 1, when some of the members of the Red Legion talk about stuff like the Battle of Kithar, where Håkan first used his blades during the Convocation Wars. They were able to pretty much just run through the demons, and it wasn't much of a competition to begin with. So I would definitely put them above. Now below Shaikan, just because the average Shaikan, if it's a Shaikan warrior and they are known as mercenaries, I do think would be stronger than the average blade maybe. There are definitely blades who are a lot stronger than the Shaikan, but I would still put them above demons. Now, I do notice that I haven't put Yasha's blades on this list, so I just want to add to that. If we consider Yasha's blades to also be under blades, I would rank those below Hokan's, because with every example we had, they just performed on a lower level, so they're definitely weaker. I would still put them in the strong tier, but likely somewhere above trolls, but still below demons. They're definitely weaker than Hokan's. Now, next up is the Cyclops. The Cyclops is the titan of the trolls, and for him as a race, I would generally try to put him around above trolls, I think. Maybe even above Shaikan in this case, simply because the Cyclops they're not smart, but they do pack a punch, and in a lot of ways they are somewhat of a smarter version of not a smarter version of a troll, but maybe a bigger, stronger version of a troll. So definitely above trolls, and I think if one Cyclops would go against a Shaikan or anything below it, they would win. But again, their strength is more individual based. There's not that many of them. They do pack a punch though. Alright, Dervishes. Now, Dervishes, for those of you who don't know, are the units from SpellForce Shadow of the Phoenix that we see in a lot of the desert maps paired with the hazim. They aren't human, they are more spirits of the desert in this regard, and they've allied themselves with the hazim because the hazim managed to get their respect by also enduring this desert nomad lifestyle, right? So they coexist together and often do things together. Where I would put them though, that's a bit tricky, because the Dervishes, though they are strong, I don't think they are exceptionally strong. I do think a solo hazim would be stronger. They are fierce, they're for sure fierce, but I wouldn't say they are particularly strong if you just took one of them. For that reason, it's tough. I'm debating between the top of average and the bottom of strong. Top of average or bottom of strong. Now, I would argue, let's put them bottom of average. Top of average. For now, because I do want to rank the hazim higher than them. But yeah, let's keep them here for now. Drakes. Now, I talked about drakes in the last video, but the reason why I'm bringing them up here is because for the last video, I saw some people comment about how they thought I ranked dragons a bit too high, and I understood the confusion. There, they assumed that with dragons, I meant both dragons and the sort of drakes that we see, and there were some comments in the realm of, well, we beat a lot of drakes or dragons in this case throughout the games, so why are they ranked so highly? And that's true, we do kill a lot of drakes. When it comes to actual dragons, we only kill one in the Order of Dawn, and we fight against Arun, but we don't really beat him. It's implied that we couldn't beat him, it's just that we break the spell the Fial Dark had on him. So, to avoid any further confusions, I will put drakes somewhere on this list as well, and drakes will definitely be in the strong tier. They are weaker than dragons, a lot weaker than dragons, but still an issue that requires a lot of manpower and resources for most of the races like the elves, dwarves, and humans to deal with. Just take as an example the Windholm situation with the Drake, where a whole group of dwarves went up there together with Joshua, and they didn't manage to defeat him, with Joshua escaping, and more or less fleeing the fight and leaving all of them to die. So drakes would definitely be strong, and I would put a drake, depending on how we look at the average, but I think I could put a drake at somewhere around here. maybe between blades and demons. Because I think drakes could be stronger than the average demon. They have a very strong connection to normal big elder dragons, which are some of the strongest beings. So I do want to rank them somewhere around here, maybe below demons, but I think for now it fits like this. If I end up changing it, we will, but for now I want to keep them here. Dryads are an interesting bunch, because Dryads, it depends on how you look at their power. They can either be some of the strongest individuals out there, or they can be fairly weak in a one-on-one situation. The most known Dryad in SpellForce would be the Dryad of the Life Tree in Shadow of the Phoenix, and now that Dryad is a bit above average when it comes to power level. But even if we take for Dryads, that is, but even if we take her power level as a Dryad and her ability to sort of bring back life to Xu, bring back the vegetation there after her curse was broken, that power isn't really something that's combat relevant in a lot of ways. Now, to be fair, when we meet her in Shadow of the Phoenix and interact with her throughout the game, she is in a weakened state, and this refers to both her sort of normal power, but even if we compare her to all those nymphs and other like lesser, let's call them dryads that we see on that very same map, the Dryad Cove, I wouldn't say that they are too strong. I would put them into average in terms of fighting capabilities, but where maybe below Dervishes or somewhere around here. Now again, I do think they have a lot of potential. In the right situation they can be very strong, but from how it strikes me, they sort of prey on weaker units. In the Order of Dawn, there's this one side quest with one Dryad in Aloni who, while she's fairly strong, it's more that she's just preying on weak humans who aren't anything, they aren't particularly strong themselves. So I would put her on the higher end of average. Now again, the Dryad of the Life Tree from Shadow of the Phoenix, probably a lot above that, but I'll leave that for the individual list. For now, Dryads, I think around here should be fine. I don't think they don't strike me as anything too strong, but then again, we don't have that much information on what they are and what they do, or how they compare to a lot of other units. The hazim, as already said earlier, I would put on the bottom of the strong tier. I think they are stronger than Dervishes, and to clear up some confusion here as well, because I'm assuming some might have it, the hazim, and that goes for the Dervishes and the Kathai that follow, are not human. They also descend from the Shapers, which was confirmed in canon lore material when SpellForce 1 came out, so they do descend from Shapers, like the humans, elves, and dwarves. But they aren't humans, they just look fairly similar. When the Shapers went into hiding, one group of them was on Xu, and I bring this up in the comprehensive lore story video. One group was on Xu, and that group also devolved into, let's call them lesser races compared to the Shapers individually. And what ended up happening with those is that they most likely became the hazim and the Kathai as one joined people. Now, I'm saying most likely here because this hasn't been confirmed per se. We know that the hazim and Kathai both came to be this way, but it hasn't been confirmed explicitly that they're the one and the same group. Now, it makes sense, judging by where they come from and a lot of the similarities between them, but both of them are not descendants of, the game often calls them Northland humans, or like humans from the north, which refers to normal humans that came from this whole like Windwall Mountain Northander area, and then spread from there across EO. The hazim and the Kathai are not from that same group. My assumption would be that they are related to one another and then split at some point during the past, but just to clear up that confusion. And for that reason, the Kathai I would actually put, the hazim maybe above giant apes, actually, maybe above giant apes, because they are very battle hardened and experienced, and like the average hazim is you know, a warrior per se, a pirate sort of ish warrior, but a warrior nonetheless. Now the Kathai I would put above. I would put the Kathai perhaps even above Ice Elves and Dark Elves. I'm not sure if I would put them above Trolls on an individual level. As a group, perhaps, but like this, still below, because Trolls are just... I feel like Trolls are this sort of benchmark in the strong tier, like towards the middle, that a lot of the lower ones wouldn't really be able to beat in a 1v1 on average, again. But, yeah. The Kathai, very good with weapons. Warrior culture, to an extent. There are stories about how the Shaikan, later when Dragonstorm came out, but how the Shaikan even took inspiration from their weapons to make weapons for themselves. So very respected, very good with lots of different weaponry, adept at fighting, especially because you need to keep in mind the Kathai live pretty much on the border of the Black Jungle in the south of Xu. Right, the Darkwind Mountains and the Black Jungle. So they are constantly under threat, and they are known as the sort of barrier between the dark lands that are below the Darkwind Mountains and sort of the more civilized north of Xu. So yeah, I do think that on average they would fare pretty well, even against Dark Elves. Even against Dark Elves. And Ice Elves. Alright, the Kithar. This was brought up in a comment. I think the Kithar would be sort of similar to Wolflings. I would put them around here. Now, they've shown to be very strong. They are very ferocious, and there's certainly some of them who are, you know, insanely good. Insanely good. Maybe above Wolflings, I'll tell you why. They're insanely strong, but on average, I do think they are still below Dark Elves. Now, some of you might recall in the Order of Dawn, there is this whole situation in Night Whisperdale where the Dark Elves had trouble with the Kithar ever since they came from Urgath. And that is true, but the Dark Elves, they also had a lot of different things they had to deal with, namely the Blades, so that kinda didn't put the odds in their favor. I still think in an all-out battle, a Dark Elf might be able to beat the average Kithar. I would put them above Wolflings because, again, as discussed in the last video, the Wolflings are sort of enslaved to a big part by the Dark Elves, so I would say that this puts them sort of below. Not even enslaved, like made in some way, but that puts them a bit below. Now the Kithar below Dark Elves, maybe above Dark Elves. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I want to keep them around this general area here, but it's hard to say where they would fit the best. On average, yeah, let's keep them here on average, but depending on how you look at it, they might bump up 1 or 2 spots because they are strong. Malachi, as an individual, is something that was also brought up, and I think I replied to a comment there saying that I didn't really want to rank individuals too much, but I figured, you know, since we have the Circle Mages and the Shapers, and a lot of people are wondering where Malachi would be on this power list, I do want to include him. And in terms of where I would put him, and it's a lot easier with him since he's just an individual, so there's no average, it's just him, I would put them in... I would put him in Godlike tier, below the Circle Mages. Below the Circle Mages, below the Dragons, and things like that, because Malachi, his biggest strength by far was his intellect. He was insanely smart, and a lot of his power came from his research and his willingness to dive into topics that many would consider taboo and that were not that explored at the time. On an individual level, when you fight against... Well, it's Malachi and Sovina's body, but at the end of Shadow Wars, he's still powerful. Maybe put him above Giants here. He's still very powerful, though it's hard to say if that's his actual power, if he may have been stronger or weaker in his normal body. My guess would be stronger, but he's still very powerful, though, again, his biggest threat was just the fact that he was the sole individual who mastered the Materia Prima and managed to create his own life, something that no one except Aeonia managed to do before. In a pure one-on-one scenario, I think he loses to a Circle Mage. But even the Circle-Mages themselves admitted in a lot of the texts in SpellForce 2 that Malachi's intellect was in a lot of ways above their own. So while he may have not been able to beat them in a 1v1, in terms of what he knew and what he was capable of doing, he was definitely very strong, so I would put him into the godlike tier. And this is also a great example of how some tiers can have outliers that are way, way beyond what the average of the tier would be, because Malachi was a human. And the humans, if you look at it, humans are towards the bottom of the average tier. They aren't anything in particular. Like they you know, take a peasant human, they can't really square up against most of the things above them. But Malachi was in the godlike tier. He made it all the way there. So, and that's without any Allfire and stuff that the Shapers and the Circle Mages had. So I would put him this highly, even actually above Shapers. Even above normal Shapers. We talked about why normal Shapers are a bit below. Shapers at the prime of their power are definitely a lot stronger, with the Shapers A up here with Allfire. But I would put Malachi here. I feel like that's a fairly comfortable place for him to be. Mala are the creation of Malachi, so the life he managed to create. Now, he considered them the perfect life forms. In reality, they weren't really that perfect. There were a lot of issues with them, but you know, it's in the eye of the beholder, and we have a lot of instances of where certain gods, for example, Zorach, when he shaped a lot of different beings into the orcs and trolls and stuff like that. He also considered the trolls, for example, to be a lot better than orcs, even though trolls have their own drawbacks. Now, for his particular purpose, yes, they were better, but, you know, depends on who makes them and who judges by that. Realistically speaking, though, I would put the Mala probably around the same as Blades. I would maybe put them a bit below Blades. Maybe a bit below Blades on average, but they are very strong. I do think they're stronger than Demons. Not because there's not demons that are as strong as Mala, but just, again, taking an average Mala against an average demon, I think the Mala would have a shot at it. Drake's same reasoning. Blades, maybe not, but that's something that would be interesting to see. Now, timeline-wise, it's very hard to pit those two against one another, but, you know, would be interesting. Medusas are also pretty high. In the strong tier, no doubt, and I would even put Medusas... let's put them... Let's put Medusas here. Below Mala, but above Drake's. I know that the Medusa sort of image and of how strong they're supposed to be has maybe been a bit tainted for the people who've played SpellForce 3, because the Medusa, they are more or less reduced to just a normal mob that you can find at every corner. But in the actual lore, when Medusas are talked about, they're from the Lost Isles. Shah of the Isles, the Circle Mage, brought them under his control. He was the first human who managed to do that, and that's what granted him a seat in the Circle. But they were so powerful that the Circle actually used the Medusas as a private guard of sorts for Mulandir and for their towers. That's something we see in both SpellForce 1 when we go to Mulandir, with some of them still being there, and they're insanely powerful and tough to deal with, even on an individual level, and they are also in Conquest of Io. When you fight against the Circle Mages at their towers, they will sometimes have stacks of Medusas there. So the Circle valued them a lot. They aren't as numerous as some of the others, but I think individually they would be around here. I think that's a fairly good fit for them. I do think they beat Drakes. They're also stronger than some demons on average, trolls and stuff like that. Mala would have to see. Depends on how their magic would impact them. But let's keep them here for now. Rune Warriors, I want to keep for last. Psych Terrors, again, Shadow of the Phoenix mob. I would put them on par with giant apes, but below them, actually, a bit below them. Psych Terrors are dangerous. They also generally live in, or sort of when they attack, it's not individually, it's in larger groups, and what makes them very hard to deal with is the fact that they are just merciless. Now, some of them, a group of them, I think the Grass Devils it was, which is a very similar race, pretty much the same thing, just a different version of them, are even known to kill for fun instead of, killing because they need food or something. No, they just kill for sport, which is something to consider in fighting, so they don't hold back. They, kill their prey just for the sake of killing them, but they aren't the smartest, so I would keep them here. They have a big weakness to fire, which also sort of bumps them down, so a fire user from the average ranks would probably be able to beat them as well. But I feel like they could comfortably sit at the bottom of strong or top of average. The Dervishes, and actually that's a good point I just brought up here myself. I think maybe even put them below Dervishes, because Dervishes are very good with fire, and I don't think it would be sort of right to keep them above Dervishes, when an average Dervish could probably beat them. But that's more because of the whole fire anti-synergy that they have going on. Tree Wraith, I would also put into average. I don't think they are too bad. I would put them sort of around Minotaurs. I know in-game they are very hard to deal with, but lore-wise, it's just corrupted trees. They aren't that particularly strong, and I don't think there's too much to say about them, so I would keep them around Minotaur level, maybe a bit higher than Minotaurs. And last but not least, for this list, Rune Warriors. There was a reason why I didn't want to rank Rune Warriors in my previous list, and that was mainly because, well, it's hard to rank Rune Warriors, because Rune Warriors could rank from average to the top of Godlike, and that's not something that's very easy to sort of put on this particular list. How do we do this? What's the best way of doing this? Because we don't know that many. I mean, we do see a lot of Rune Warriors, because all the Rune heroes we have in SpellForce 1 are technically Rune Warriors. But the fact that Rune Warriors have an amazing potential to grow, with the fact that they're bound to a rune and they have this, basically never-ending cycle of going into a fight, dying, and just gaining more and more experience like that. They're hard to rank. Definitely above Shaikan, because in Shadow Wars there are mentions of the Shaikan fighting some things, and how not even Rune Warriors would be able to defeat something like that easily. I think that's in Underhall, which implies that a Rune Warrior would be stronger than a Shaikan on average. I would even put them above Shapers. I definitely want to go into Godlike with Rune Warriors. And in terms of where, I would put them above Giants, but below Malachi. Again, mainly for the reason that they just have so much room to grow there. Fjaldark, also an interesting thing to pit them up against. Yes, we do defeat a Fjaldark throughout the campaign, but that's with the help of the Shadow Blade, so it's not just a Rune Warrior, it's with external assistance, and even with that, it's not easy. I don't think any time we face a Fjaldark you would really, well, it depends on how you build in-game, obviously, but lore-wise you would be able to defeat one realistically. Dragons, I also don't think that you could beat Elder Dragons. For that, we do kill one, and we do fight Orion, but that's with the help of an entire army in both cases. So, judging by that, I just don't think that's something that we can go off of. So, Godlike tier it is for them, above Giants, below Malachi, because I just think Malachi's magic would be too much for most Rune Warriors to handle. If we take the pinnacle of Rune Warrior power, with the end of Shadow of the Phoenix and our Rune Warriors combining to beat Belial, being amped up by the Resurrected Circle Mages, yes, you could make the argument that the Rune Warriors could be somewhere about here, maybe even above Dragons and stuff like that, but again, even in that scenario, it's multiple of them, it's not just one, and you don't kill Belial, you just interrupt Hokan merging with Belial, so the Phoenix can be set free and, defeat them. And with that, that's the second updated version of the tier list with everything we had in the first one plus some things added. If I forgot something, let me know. I am not opposed to making a third video on something like that. I already noticed that I didn't add something like the Elven Titan, Orc Titan, Dark Elven Titan from SpellForce 1 and stuff like that, so that might be something to add in the future. If there's anything else, let me know. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you disliked it, you can also dislike it. Don't forget, if you like talking about these sorts of things, I do too, so you can join our fan pages and our fan Discord. Links are in the description below, and we can talk about this kind of stuff there. I'm always up for it. So yeah, with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.